Chapter 14, Extremely Low Temperature, I Smile at the Outside World. The Ice Age kicked off. In the southern Tianhai city, heavy snows fell, and there was a lot of talk on the internet, with some people complaining and some people celebrating. But none of them knew that this heavy snowfall and temperature drop was not temporary, but would continue and expand. In the end, it would bring about a disaster that no one could bear. But at this moment, Zhang Yi was lying on the sofa at home, comfortably enjoying the temperature of more than 30 degrees in the safe house while savoring a cold beer, which was very cozy. At this time, Zhang Yi's cell phone suddenly rang. He took it over to take a look, and it turned out to be people in the mobile phone chat group chatting. Among them were his previous schoolmates group, interest groups, and the neighborhood's homeowners group. Geez, why is it suddenly snowing so heavily? The weather forecast didn't say that either. It was so cold that I woke up in the middle of the night. Hurry up and turn on the heater. Stop it, this broken air conditioning heating effect in our house is not powerful. Half a day, it is getting colder and colder. I don't know how long this cold weather will last. I haven't bought my winter clothes yet. Everyone was talking and expressing their feelings. However, Zhang Yi could feel that most of the people did not take the sudden temperature drop seriously. Instead, they were a bit surprised. Zhang Yi knew very well in his heart that this was just tentative. He yawned and did not intend to continue watching. Returning to his large, warm bed, Zhang Yi covered himself with a velvet quilt and closed his eyes comfortably. His bed was very comfortable, a high-grade item that had been moved from inside the Walmart warehouse. Especially the mattress, it was said to be the same model of a certain actress, worth $3 million. Outside, the snow was falling and the cold wind was howling, but inside the house, the fireplace was blazing and the temperature was pleasant. In such a cozy environment, Zhang Yi quickly entered the dreamland. Early the next morning, Zhang Yi was woken up by the ringing of his cell phone. When he opened his eyes, it turned out to be a call from White Lotus Fanyuqing. Having been disturbed from his good dream, Zhang Yi's mood was naturally not very comfortable. He took the phone and asked in a bad mood, "Hey, why are you calling me early in the morning?" Fanyuqing froze for a moment when she heard Zhang Yi's cold tone. But soon, she still said, "Zhang Yi, it's so cold outside today. Did you know in advance that there would be a big temperature drop when you stocked up on supplies before?" Fanyuqing's voice trembled a little, as if she was desperately trying to endure something. When Zhang Yi heard this, the corner of his mouth hooked up into a mocking arc. Sure enough, this White Lotus had nothing to do with it. He lazily said, "I also heard my friend casually mention it, but I didn't expect the temperature to drop so much." He lifted the quilt and the temperature in the room was very high, making him sweat a little on his body. Zhang Yi put on his slippers and headed out, and when he came to the floor-to-ceiling window, the familiar scene in front of him made his eyes glaze over. The heavy snow outside had already flooded the entire city, and he couldn't even see the streets and roadside shrubs now. Only able to vaguely see the outlines of the city's buildings, many of the first floors of the houses were mostly submerged. Moreover, the heavy snow continued, goose feather-like snowflakes kept falling to the earth, with no sign of stopping at all. On the other end of the phone, Fanyuqing was still saying, "No wonder you've hoarded so many things, Zhang Yi, you're really something, you didn't tell me about this kind of thing in advance." Zhang Yi frowned, never imagining that she would still have the face to come over and complain about herself. He directly hung up the phone and then threw it aside. Then, he went to the restroom to take a hot bath comfortably. Then he took out a piece of top-quality A5 Wagyu beef from his space, and had steak with spaghetti for breakfast. While eating breakfast, he turned on the TV to watch. Nowadays, the cooling had just been ushered in and there hadn't been any power outages yet, so the TV could still be watched normally. But even if there was a blackout, Zhang Yi had prepared all sorts of backup power sources, as well as dozens of generators and huge amounts of gasoline. This piece of energy would not be a problem for at least 300 years. After opening the TV, Zhang Yi took the lead in tuning to the morning news channel. Although as a reborn person, he knew how the situation outside was. But at times like this, taking a look at the situation outside was also a form of pastime. On this side of the news station, the two anchors were surprisingly wearing thick down jackets. You have to know that in a place like a TV station, the central heating and air conditioning is not stingy, and it is also a place that prioritizes the electricity supply. But the fact that the anchors both needed to wear down jackets meant that the temperature had reached a point where the central air conditioning was unable to fully withstand it. The female anchor looked at the camera and tried to say in a smooth tone, "Last night, a strong cold air struck all over the globe, leading to drastic changes in global temperatures. The general temperature drop reached 70 to 100 degrees Celsius. The meteorological department is conducting an investigation regarding the cause of this cold air's arrival. In the next few days, I hope everyone pays good attention to keeping warm and not getting frostbite. Try not to go out if you don't have to. Officials will solve this problem appropriately. I hope everyone won't panic. Don't spread rumors and don't believe them, and don't engage in any looting of supplies. The snowstorm will soon pass." Hearing the anchorwoman's words, Zhang scoffed. "After the Ice Age, if you want to live, you can only rely on yourself. If you really stay home and do nothing, you will definitely be the first to die." The upper right corner of the TV already showed that the outdoor temperature in Tianhai City had reached 65 degrees below zero. One should know that during the daytime yesterday, the highest temperature in Tianhai City was still 15 degrees, which means that it cooled down by 80 degrees all of a sudden. Zhang Yi shrugged his shoulders. This level of temperature drop was exactly the same as in his previous life. However, the current him was wearing his pajamas, drinking red wine and eating steak with pasta, not feeling the cold outside in the slightest. After all, it was a safe house that cost $8 million to build, and he had specifically emphasized on the function of insulation, so the temperature inside the house would barely pass. At this time, Zhang Yi's cell phone rang again. He was interested and curious to see what those neighbors who had laughed at him before were chatting about. The first thing he saw was a message from Fang Yuqing. "Zhang Yi, why did you hang up on others all of a sudden? It's snowing heavily outside. I have no way to go out. Didn't you buy a lot of food? Can you lend me some first? I'll return it to you when the snowstorm passes." Zhang Yi raised an eyebrow, a cold smile floating at the corner of his mouth. The White Lotus was brainy enough to know that with that much snow, food would become very expensive. She didn't want to brave the super cold temperature of -60 to -70 degrees to go out, so she wanted to ask Zhang Yi for food. But Zhang Yi knew that this glacial disaster would last for a very long time and would not pass quickly at all. Moreover, it was impossible for him to give Fang Yuqing a bite of food in the first place. In his previous life, he had been mesmerized by this White Lotus and had given her a lot of food from his own home. At the end of the day, she even got Zhang Yi killed and had to dig out Zhang Yi's ribs to make soup. Such a woman, Zhang Yi now only wanted to tease her properly and then watch how she died miserably. Thinking of this, a teasing smile appeared at the corner of his mouth as he sent a message to Fang Yuqing. "You said it earlier, I've pretty much eaten everything I've hoarded at home. Look, the steak was just pan-fried this morning." After Zhang Yi finished speaking, he even took a selfie of himself and the steak and red wine on the table. He intentionally took a picture of himself in his pajamas as well and sent it to Fang Yuqing. Chapter 15, White Lotus asks for supplies. At this moment, Fang Yuqing was curled up in her rental house, wrapping the two quilts around her body to death. Although the heater had been turned up to 40 degrees, the indoor temperature didn't even reach 0 degrees. She was freezing and shivering, feeling that the air was filled with cold wind pouring into the quilts. And after seeing the photo sent over by Zhang Yi, Fang Yuqing immediately stared at it with wide eyes. She couldn't believe that in such cold weather, Zhang Yi was still wearing thin pajamas, comfortably eating steak and drinking red wine. Obviously, everyone was living in the same unit. Why did it feel like living in two different worlds? Especially after seeing the delicious steak on the table and the bottle of high-grade red wine, Fang Yuqing's mouth was watering. As a top-notch White Lotus plus a salvage girl, she had researched about all these high-grade goods. According to her knowledge, the steak that Zhang Yi was eating looked like an authentic top-grade Wagyu beef. Especially the French red wine he had on hand was definitely of chateau level, with a bottle costing at least $20,000 to $30,000. She was freezing to death right now, while Zhang Yi was living so comfortably, immediately making Fan Yuqing jealous to death. She immediately sent a message to Zhang Yi. "It's so nice, I want to eat steak and drink red wine too." She felt that her hints were already very obvious. According to Zhang Yi's previous character, he would definitely take the initiative to bring her steak and red wine at this time. But Zhang Yi laughed happily after seeing this. Still treating him as a lapdog from the past? He slowly replied over with a message. "If you want to eat, go to the supermarket and buy it." Fan Yuqing's face stiffened after seeing this message. Isn't this nonsense? It was 60 to 70 degrees below zero outside, and any inch of skin exposed right now had the possibility of frostbite. She was such a delicate girl, how could he make such an outrageous demand? Fan Yuqing gritted her teeth and huffed, "Zhang Yi, you really aren't a man. You don't even know to come over and show off when you're given such a good opportunity, humph." At this time, Fan Yuqing still had some backbone. Although she wanted to eat steak and drink high-grade red wine. But in her eyes, Zhang Yi was just a fish inside her fish pond. Moreover, she thought that this snowstorm wouldn't last more than a few days before it passed. Therefore, she still tried to maintain her image as a haughty goddess and did not take the initiative to ask Zhang Yi to give her food. Zhang Yi continued to ignore Fan Yuqing and went to look at the other chat groups, intending to see a good show. When he saw the owners group of their neighborhood, he happened to see Auntie Lin from the neighborhood committee urging everyone not to panic and stay at home in an old-fashioned manner. "Don't be anxious, everyone, it's just a sudden drop in temperature, it will pass in 2 or 3 days at most. Don't ever go looting for supplies, trust our officials. Our neighborhood committee will also help everyone think of ways to get through this snowstorm. Please obey orders and follow directions, and don't cause trouble for the officials." Some owners raised objections. "With this much snow, I don't know when it will stop. It's troublesome for us to go out now, can we do it without stocking up on supplies at home?" "That's right, or else go out and buy some vegetables back. I'm afraid that the price of vegetables is going to go up like crazy again in the next few days." Auntie Lin immediately aggravated her tone. "What are you guys doing? Isn't this adding to the chaos? Looting supplies will only cause prices to become more expensive, and then everyone will have to eat high-priced food. If anyone dares to go hoarding supplies and I find out, don't blame me for reporting them to the top for disturbing the people." Zhang Yi saw Auntie Lin, who was directing everyone like a leader inside the group, and the corner of his mouth hooked into a cold smile. Today was the first day of the Ice Age, and due to the cold weather outside, the supplies inside the supermarket hadn't actually been looted yet. If one were to brave the snow and go out at this time, although there was a risk of frostbite, there was definitely a chance of stocking up on a certain amount of supplies. But due to this Auntie Lin's intimidation, many people took a chance and didn't go out to buy food. What the end result was could be imagined. It was at this time that Auntie Lin's spearhead suddenly pointed at Zhang Yi. She sent a message to Zhang Yi inside the owners group. "Little Zhang, you've hoarded a lot of things inside your home before. Now that the snowstorm is severe, you can't be even more of a negative example of this. Stay at home honestly these days. If I find you going out to buy things again, don't blame Auntie Lin for being unkind." Zhang Yi's face became a bit ugly. This old pious woman, last time, because she asked for something for herself, he didn't give it to her. So she kept it in her heart and didn't forget to clip her tongue this time when she found the opportunity. However, it's a pity that the neighborhood committee ant is just a fart to Zhang Yi right now. He replied with a cold smile, "Auntie Lin, who knows how long this snowstorm will last? In case it's a long time, and when the time comes for everyone to have nothing to eat, can you take the responsibility?" Zhang Yi asked this question, which sort of spoke the minds of quite a few people. Everyone was dissatisfied with Auntie Lin's words, but they just didn't quite dare to refute them due to Auntie Lin's status as a member of the neighborhood committee. With Zhang Yi taking the lead, someone immediately stepped forward to ask. "Yes, you won't let us stock up on supplies. Who's to blame for the lack of food and drink when the time comes? Can you afford the responsibility?" Auntie Lin was also a bit flustered when she saw that everyone had come forward to refute her. At the same time, she hated Zhang Yi even more in her heart. How dare he openly refute her inside the owners group? Isn't this not giving her face? Don't worry, this matter our neighborhood committee can tell you all very responsibly that there will be no shortage of supplies. The snowstorm will also pass quickly. And you, Zhang Yi, don't incite people at a time like this, you're breaking the law. Auntie Lin, who was huddled at home, gritted her teeth and said viciously, this Zhang Yi really doesn't know the heights of heaven and earth, so I'll think of a way to find a dark place to detain him for a few days. Zhang Yi laughed out loud. At such a time, the old woman surnamed Lin still wanted to act like the past, relying on her little power to act as a bully. It was really laughable. Egu, I can't afford to wear such a big high hat. Don't worry about it, it's so cold outside, I won't even go out if I'm told to. You guys feel free. His supplies had long been stocked up, so of course there was no need to go out and grab leaves of vegetables with others inside the supermarket. But those who believed Auntie Lin's bullshit would be miserable afterwards. Zhang Yi's heart somewhat sighed in lamentation, the end was coming, and he didn't know how many people were going to die of freezing and starvation. But some people deserve to die, such as those neighbors who had killed him in his previous life. Regardless of whether they are dead or alive, Zhang Yi has made up his mind that he will continue to live. What did the deaths and lives of others have to do with him, Zhang Yi? After he said that, he also proudly mocked, I am able to get where I am today, relying on the power of my parents and family. How can it be the same as you poor bastards? Hurry up if you need to plow snow, you still have to go out to earn money for food. After you finish clearing the snow, I'll be able to leave this hellhole. As everyone listened to Su Hao's arrogant words, they were all furious. But again, they were all powerless to refute them. Who could blame him for being born into a good family? Although those words were harsh to the ears, how could they not be the truth? Chen Zhenghao making such a mess with Su Hao had completely chilled everyone's hearts as well. Auntie Lin's words also became dog shit, and no one paid any attention to her anymore. Auntie Lin was simply furious. However, she was not angry with Chen Zhenghao and Su Hao, but with Zhang Yi. She felt that she had succeeded in mobilizing the owners, and it was Zhang Yi, the shit-stirrer, who had spoiled her good work. So she sent a private message to Zhang Yi and asked very angrily, Zhang Yi, are you deliberately messing with me? Tell me what you really want. I told everyone to go out and plow snow, does everyone need to go out? This is great, everyone is quitting, are we going to stay sealed up in our homes forever? Zhang Yi raised an eyebrow. Yoo-hoo, there were still those who came to the door looking for a scolding. Stop pretending to be stupid. You're just a bully and afraid of the strong, so why are you still barking here? You've been scolded by others and don't even dare to let out a single word, so you've come to me to find a sense of existence, haven't you? I'm telling you, I'm not someone you can easily bully. If you bark at me again, I'll kill you. Zhang Yi had Auntie Lin's character pinpointed to a T. She was just a punk who bullied the soft and feared the strong. Sure enough, after Zhang Yi said these harsh words, he also made Auntie Lin scared to death. She was an old woman living with her grandchildren, and it was only because of her neighborhood committee status that people gave her respect. But if others disregarded his neighborhood committee status and fought with her, she was simply not enough for others to fight. She didn't dare to speak at that moment, as if she was afraid of really enraging Zhang Yi. Auntie Lin hastily blocked Zhang Yi, fearing that Zhang Yi would criticize her again. Her body trembled, not knowing if it was because she was freezing, or she was frightened by Zhang Yi. This bastard. Nothing short of an asshole, a psychopath. It's better not to provoke him now, just wait, I'll have plenty of ways to make your life bad in the future. Auntie Lin's mind thought of the future, when she relied on her status as a neighborhood committee to make things difficult for Zhang Yi. For example, when distributing household goods, she would deliberately delay handouts to Zhang Yi. Or maybe there were some good community activities that Zhang Yi would not be told about. She pictured Zhang Yi's remorseful appearance at that time, and even felt that Zhang Yi would come over and beg her to let it go, while she closed the doors in a high and cold manner and said, "Aren't you cocky? You're being arrogant again." Auntie Lin smiled beautifully at the thought. Hey, sooner or later, there will be a day when you come begging to me. For now, I won't get on your bad side. Auntie Lynn got satisfaction with this kind of mental triumph. She then proceeded to run to the group to mobilize the others to go out and plow snow. Everyone in the group despised Auntie Lynn. However, most of them would have to go out to work in the future, and considering the problem of their own mobility, there were still some honest support members who took their tools and went out to sweep the snow in the bitter cold of more than 70 degrees below zero. Zhang-Yi, however, did not expect that, after scolding away Auntie Lynn, someone else came over to look for trouble on the other side. This time, his WeChat phone was called. He took a look at the avatar, and it was that Chen Zhenghao from the group. It seemed like Zhang-Yi had just talked about him in the group, making him feel upset, so he called over to scare Zhang-Yi. Zhang-Yi already had a grudge against this asshole, and when he saw him calling him, he immediately narrowed his eyes. The current him was rather hoping that this ungrateful bastard would come over to find trouble for himself. After all, in this safe house, it was impossible for Zhang-Yi to go out. But if anyone dared to come over to find trouble, he could have the means to make that person die a very miserable death. So Zhang-Yi picked up the phone. Chapter 18, Playing Tough, Who's Afraid of Who? As soon as the phone connected, a torrent of fierce national abuse came pouring over. Are you looking for death, you son of a bitch? Who told you to talk about me in the group? Dare to mess with me, Chen Zhenghao, you little brat, you obviously don't want to live anymore. I have 100 ways to make you unable to stay in this city, do you believe that? Chen Zhenghao is also a well-known bully in Tianhai City. He has hundreds of people under his command and is said to have been involved in several fatal accidents. Therefore, all the owners in the community where he lives avoid him, and no one dares to provoke him. In order to establish his authority, Chen Zhenghao's style of doing things is that if anyone dares to offend him even a little, he will make that person pay a huge price. This is the so-called face of a social person. Therefore, even though Zhang-Yi had only mentioned him in the group of owners, Chen Zhenghao still took it as a kind of provocation. On the other end of the phone, he cursed fiercely, "You really want to die? You're quite full of yourself, aren't you? You're so brave to bring up my name." Zhang-Yi, of course, would not let him get away with it. With a sneer, he cursed, "What kind of useless person are you? Don't pretend to be something you're not with me, you useless piece of social trash. I'll tell you what to do." Zhang-Yi shouted, feeling an extraordinary sense of relief. He had been holding a lot of anger towards the murderer who had led the way into his home in his previous life and caused his death. On the other end of the phone, Chen Zhenghao didn't expect Zhang-Yi to dare to talk back. He was furious and cursed even more harshly. Zhang-Yi said directly, "You're just a useless piece of trash, who only knows how to play with your mouth, right? Who are you trying to scare? Go eat shit." After he finished scolding him, Zhang-Yi hung up the phone and then blocked him. After scolding him and then blocking him, thinking about Chen Zhenghao's furious appearance over there, Zhang-Yi felt exceptionally happy. He walked over to the TV and reached out to turn on the security camera. When the War Dragon security company built his safe house for him, they installed cameras all over the floor. It can be said that the entire building is now under his surveillance. Zhang-Yi looked at the 6th floor where Chen Zhenghao was located. Sure enough, soon the doors to their home were viciously pushed open. Chen Zhenghao was wearing a down jacket and carrying a baseball bat in his hand as he walked out menacingly. However, as soon as he stepped out the door, he immediately shivered from the cold. It was minus 70 degrees outside, and he was wearing just a down jacket over his autumn clothes just to look intimidating. He had even left the zipper open on purpose to show off his chest tattoo. The cold temperature immediately taught him a lesson. Seeing that there was no one around, Chen Zhenghao quickly rubbed his hands together and hurriedly got into the elevator. Zhang-Yi sat on the sofa and leisurely picked up a crossbow from under the coffee table. These crossbows are used for hunting. Even a 300-kilogram wild boar can be killed with one shot, as the 20-centimeter arrow can go straight through the meat. He hummed a tune while installing the arrow. After all this time practicing, he has become very skilled at using the crossbow. Within 15 meters, he can't say he'll hit the target every time, but he can hit a watermelon-sized head. The elevator kept going up, and Zhang Yi arrived at the door with his crossbow and a well-loaded arrow. His huge security door had a special firing hole reserved 2 meters above. Zhang Yi stepped on a chair and opened the door over the firing hole. It could only be opened from the inside. Then he aimed the crossbow at the corridor outside. Just to be on the safe side, Zhang Yi's pistol was also in his pocket. Even if this Chen Zhenghao is an Iron Man, he is bound to have bad luck today. After a while, the sound of an elevator could be heard, and Chen Zhenghao cursed as he walked out of the elevator. Through the notes in the owner's group, he could easily find out where Zhang Yi lived. When he arrived at the door, he picked up a baseball bat and slammed on the door while cursing. "Zhang Yi, you son of a bitch, come out here. Damn it, weren't you pretty cocky just now? Now come out if you've got the balls, and let's see how I'll kill you." Chen Zhenghao cursed viciously, then slammed on the doors. But the security doors were 20 centimeters thick, reinforced with bulletproof metal, and were even more formidable than some large tanks in terms of defensive power. Naturally, Chen Zhenghao could not break them with a baseball bat, and instead, his hand ached from the shock. Chen Zhenghao cursed and swore, but did not notice that he had already been targeted with a crossbow bolt. Zhang Yi looked at Chen Zhenghao's menacing appearance and a playful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. His crossbow bolt was aimed at Chen Zhenghao's head. But after thinking about it for a while, he changed the target of his aim. In this doomsday scenario, everyone in the building except him would basically end up dead. People like Chen Zhenghao were no exception. Killing him now would be so boring. After all, in his previous life, he had been eaten alive by these heartless neighbors. A wicked smile appeared at the corner of Zhang Yi's mouth. He wouldn't let this scum die so easily. So Zhang Yi changed his target. There was only a faint sound of breaking air, and the sharp crossbow bolt shot directly at Chen Zhenghao's leg. The arrow, which could kill a wild boar, pierced his lower leg. Chen Zhenghao let out a miserable scream, then fell to the ground, clutching his leg and wailing. With a penetrating injury in such a low temperature of minus 70 degrees Celsius, Chen Zhenghao's leg was definitely useless. Moreover, due to the lack of medicine, infection was inevitable. Next, he would die miserably in pain and cold. Chen Zhenghao was in excruciating pain, and it was only then that he realized he had encountered a terrifyingly ruthless person. In fact, these gangsters rely on their fearlessness and recklessness. They gamble on the fact that honest people dare not resist them. But when they encounter ruthless people who dare to play with crossbows, they will be scared too. Chen Zhenghao was so scared that he crapped his pants, and he didn't even see where the arrow came from. But he is a tough guy in the underworld, and he managed to drag his crippled leg and run back to the elevator. Zhang Yi did not choose to continue attacking for the simple reason that he wanted Chen Zhenghao to live a little longer. After all, he is not a monster. Chen Zhenghao ran back to the elevator, cold sweat running down his face, quickly freezing in the sub-minus 70 degrees Celsius cold. But at this moment, his heart was colder than the air temperature. The other party had just attacked mercilessly, and he could feel the cold, murderous intent. In today's society, no one who dares to shoot someone with a crossbow is someone to mess with. Chen Zhenghao looked at his own mangled leg, which had been completely pierced by the crossbow bolt. The blood had dyed half of his pant leg red, and then it had turned to ice. In the extreme cold, his pain was not that intense. However, this did not make Chen Zhenghao feel relieved, but rather, he was scared to the bone. He knew that if things continued like this, his leg would be useless in less than half an hour if he did not receive medical treatment. Chapter 19, I'll give you a cold shower. Chen Zhenghao finally felt fear. He took out his phone and called the hospital. However, the call was constantly disconnected. Chen Zhenghao dialed for more than 2 minutes, and the display showed that it was a busy line. Chen Zhenghao's heart sank. At this time, it was freezing cold outside, and even the hospitals were in a state of shutdown. Even if some hospitals were still open, it was impossible to send an ambulance out to save someone in a snowstorm that had shut down the city. Chen Zhenghao was a tough guy, and after hesitating for a long time, he decided to operate on himself. At the very least, he had to remove the crossbow bolt. After returning home with difficulty, he took out a knife, an alcohol lamp, bandages and medicine from a drawer to stop the bleeding. He had fought with others many times before, so these things were naturally always kept at home. Chen Zhenghao used the knife to cut open his pant leg, and when he saw the wound, he was also shocked and pale. In the extreme cold, the wound on his leg had already frozen. Although this temporarily stopped the blood from flowing, the area around the wound had already begun to turn blue and purple, and he had completely lost feeling in his lower leg. Chen Zhenghao was disheartened. He knew that at a time like this, he could only rely on himself to save himself. Fortunately, he was a tough guy who had been in the underworld. After thinking for a moment, he performed surgery on himself. Since the calf had been badly frostbitten, the pain was numbed by the low temperature. So even without anesthetic, he successfully completed the surgery. However, the process was so painful that he almost fainted. And that calf was obviously useless. Chen Zhenghao lay on the sofa, breathing heavily, and in his heart, he hated Zhang Yi, who had shot him, to the core. "Zhang Yi, you little punk, I'm going to kill you, I definitely will." Chen Zhenghao's eyes were full of murderous intent. He wasn't joking, he really intended to get Zhang Yi killed. Otherwise, how was he going to get anywhere in Tianhai City in the future? Chen Zhenghao picked up his phone, but since Zhang Yi had blocked him, he had to tag Zhang Yi in the owner's group. "Zhang Yi, you son of a bitch, just you wait, if I don't kill you, Chen Zhenghao, will write my name in backwards." The owners didn't really know what had happened. But when they learned that Zhang Yi had offended Chen Zhenghao, they couldn't help but feel a little worried for him. Chen Zhenghao is an authentic gangster, and he's ruthless. But if everyone knew that Zhang Yi had shot him and crippled his leg, they would be so scared that they wouldn't be able to say a word. However, some people were very excited. For example, Auntie Lin, who had previously been frustrated by Zhang Yi, said happily, "It's best when dogs bite dogs." Neither one of them is any good. I hope that Chen Zhenghao, that scoundrel, beats Zhang Yi up, so that this damn thing can keep its mouth shut about me. Fan Yuqing, the White Lotus, also saw the news in the group. She shrugged, and secretly hoped that Zhang Yi would get beaten up by Chen Zhenghao. Who let Zhang Yi be so cold to her, and not even know that she, the goddess, wanted food, so shouldn't he deliver it obediently? However, no one in the group dared to speak up, for fear that this matter would implicate them. Zhang Yi saw this message and laughed out loud. As long as he himself did not leave the safe house, he did not care about 100 Chen Zhenghaos. Zhang Yi sent a voice message to the phone. "What are you? You only know how to bark. If you dare to provoke me again, I'll cripple the rest of your leg too." The owners in the group were in an uproar when they heard this voice message. They didn't expect Zhang Yi to dare to go against Chen Zhenghao. And it looked like he had injured Chen Zhenghao's leg. Chen Zhenghao held the phone so tightly that he almost broke it. "Damn you, Zhang Yi, just you wait, I'll get you back." Zhang Yi was also very rude. "You son of a bitch, if you've got some balls, come over here and see who dies first." It has to be said, after the end of the world, Zhang Yi is very easygoing. Without so many concerns about public order, good customs and social morality, he doesn't have to give face or respect to anyone now, and that's just great. On the other hand, Chen Zhenghao's heroic lungs are about to explode. After returning to the house, he gradually regained consciousness thanks to the insignificant effect of the central air conditioning. However, the intense pain in his legs made him grit his teeth. Now, he could only rely on his crutches to move. After thinking about it for a while, Chen Zhenghao felt that it would not be difficult to get Zhang Yi killed. He felt that he had been shot an arrow, just because he was careless. Now that he was on his guard, he could perfectly call his minions over and rush into Zhang Yi's house to beat him to death. It was freezing cold outside anyway, and hospitals and police stations were in a state of shutdown. It was the best time to get someone killed. Chen Zhenghao immediately called his henchmen and asked them to bring their weapons and come over to help him get rid of Zhang Yi. Many of Chen Zhenghao's henchmen lived nearby, and after receiving Chen Zhenghao's order, they brought machetes, baseball bats, steel pipes, and other objects to Chen Zhenghao's house. Seeing Chen Zhenghao's injury on his leg, the henchmen shouted that they wanted to beat the man to death and take revenge for Chen Zhenghao. Chen Zhenghao said coldly, "I'm fine. I'll go to the hospital after the snow melts in a few days and rest for a while. But this son of a bitch actually dared to shoot me. Isn't that like picking a fight with the local tyrant? If I don't kill him, how will I be able to make a name for myself in the future?" One of his subordinates said at the time, "Brother Hao, you told me the room number of his house. How nice of you. I'll go chop him up right now." Chen Zhenghao nodded. "They live in room 2401 of this building, but this little punk is very sneaky and has a crossbow. He ambushed me with a crossbow." One of the henchmen yelled, holding up a steel pipe, "This person is also too uncivilized. How dare he go for a sneak attack?" Chen Zhenghao said, "Be careful when you go over there. I know he's the only one at home. Just don't let him shoot, break down their doors, and kill him however you can." Chen Zhenghao's men were all outlaws. Although they knew that Zhang Yi had a weapon, they were not afraid. On the contrary, they became excited. Now that the city was under lockdown due to the snowstorm, there was no law and order. They could go to someone's house and beat them up openly. The maliciousness in human nature was let loose on them without restraint. So, they grabbed their weapons and headed to Zhang Yi's house together, wanting to break in. And Zhang Yi knew that Chen Zhenghao would not let this go so easily and would definitely come back for revenge. However, Zhang Yi was not nervous at all. He was at home, playing games while using split screen to monitor the movements in the entire building. He saw everything that happened when Chen Zhenghao's little thugs came over. The table in front of him was full of equipment, just waiting for them to come over and give them a good show. Those social outcasts deserved to die anyway, and Zhang Yi wouldn't have any soft thoughts. In a short while, more than a dozen of Chen Zhenghao's thugs arrived at Zhang Yi's front door. They knew that Zhang Yi had a crossbow in his hands, so they were a little careful when they came over. Several of them held wooden boards in front of them as shields. When they arrived at Zhang Yi's house and found that everything was fine, they started to get violent. "Open the door! You son of a bitch, how dare you shoot our brother Hao? Today we're going to kill you. This day next year will be your death anniversary. Open the door!" As they yelled and cursed, they started to pound on Zhang Yi's house doors with hammers and iron bars. They wanted to break down the door, teach Zhang Yi a lesson, and then hand him over to Chen Zhenghao. Zhang Yi, who was playing a game, was calm. He happened to get stuck at the boss of the first level and died 7 or 8 times without getting past it. At this time, his mood was a bit bad. Hearing the shouting and cursing outside and the sound of banging on the door, Zhang Yi angrily yelled, "Can't you guys use some force? Haven't you eaten?" Hearing Zhang Yi's arrogance, the little underlings became even more angry, and their blows became even heavier. However, the security doors, which were made of 20 centimeters thick alloy, were difficult to open even with a small explosion. Not to mention that they were just trying to break the doors down with brute force. After half a day of hard hammering, only a few small white spots appeared on the metal doors, and a little paint had chipped off. Let alone breaking the doors, not even a dent could be made. The little underlings were dumbfounded. "Holy shit, this door is made of solid metal. It's so thick, how are we going to break it down? Damn, how many enemies does this guy have?" The group of young underlings were dumbfounded. However, when they arrived, they had promised Chen Zhenghao that they would beat Zhang Yi half to death and bring him back. Now that they couldn't break down the doors, there was nothing they could do to go back and report in, so they kept on smashing and yelling outside the doors. Zhang Yi's game character died again. Listening to the young underlings screaming outside, he was finally a little annoyed. He went to the kitchen, connected a water hose to the faucet, and climbed up to the firing port. The little underlings outside the doors didn't notice that someone was up there, and they were still barking. Zhang Yi let out a cold laugh, then turned on the water and aimed it at them. The rushing water fell like a heavy rain in the narrow hallway, instantly drenching them. Chapter 20, Start a Life of Lying Down. Can you imagine what it's like to be doused in cold water in temperatures of -70 degrees Celsius? Zhang Yi took a big water hose and started pouring it over the underlings outside the doors. There was a temperature difference of about 100 degrees between inside and outside. So the water was still hot when it came out, but after it hit the people, it quickly froze. It was freezing cold, and they were all wearing down jackets and sweaters. The cold water soaked them, and they suddenly felt as if they had been put in an ice cellar. Shit, it's cold, I'm freezing. Ah, stop, stop. At this point, they would rather be beaten up than suffer this freezing torture. One by one, their lips turned purple from the cold, and some even fainted from the extreme cold. Instinctively, they hurriedly ran away from Zhang Yi's house. But just 10 seconds was enough time for them to get soaked to the skin. They didn't even have time to get on the elevator to escape, and their clothes were already frozen stiff. Zhang Yi watched them all run away before he turned off the tap. He had planned to teach them a lesson with his crossbow. But it would have been too slow to reload, and they could have shot back through the firing hole. Instead, this flooding method worked better. After Zhang Yi doused the underlings, they all got so cold that their lips turned purple. They hurried back to Chen Zhenghao's house. Chen Zhenghao was furious when he saw them come back in such a state. "Where is that little brat? Did you bring him back?" The lackeys, on the other hand, were frantically looking for blankets and sheets to keep warm. Their clothes were soaked through and they were all freezing. More than 10 people were scrambling for clothes and blankets in the room. However, there were not enough to go around, so the lackeys had no choice but to take off their clothes and huddle together for warmth. The scene was a little weird. Chen Zhenghao was furious. He slammed his hand down on the table and shouted, "Someone explain to me what's going on." After the brothers had regained some body heat, they explained the whole situation to Chen Zhenghao, shivering. "Zhang Yi is despicable. He even used a water hose on us. We can't stand it. The doors at his house are incredibly thick. We smashed at them for ages, but only managed to chip the paint a little." Chen Zhenghao's brow furrowed deeply upon hearing this. When he himself had gone to smash at the doors, he had indeed felt that Zhang Yi's house had very thick doors. It looked like it would be difficult to storm the place. However, soon after, he let out a sneer. "Never mind, even if their house is made of iron, there will always be a weak spot. And I don't believe that he can stay at home forever. You guys just stay nearby and as soon as he goes out, kill him for me." Chen Zhenghao said viciously. His underlings were all desperate criminals, and upon hearing this, they all shivered and sneered. Although they were already freezing like dogs, they still had to look fierce. However, they never imagined that Zhang Yi had no intention of leaving home at all. It was hell outside, but his home was paradise. Why would he go from paradise to hell? After finishing off Chen Zhenghao and the others, Zhang Yi went back to playing his game. Although he knew these guys wouldn't let it go, they didn't have the ability to break into his home. As for going out? Zhang Yi would never make that choice. Even if there was only a 1 in 10,000 chance, he would never take it. Isn't it nice to just stay at home and be comfortable? Soon afterwards, Zhang Yi went to the French windows to check out the view. Someone really was out there with a snow shovel.